Okay, hello and welcome back to our tutorial with this mouse build, Advanced SolidWorks. In our first video of this series, we built this surface here. And you can see how we built it using a boundary surface that has 3 guide curves, okay? 1, 2, and 3. We also used a series of extruded surfaces that come off the edge of our 4-sided surface in order to help the boundary surface along. Up here we did the same thing. This is in our second tutorial. In the second tutorial we created this surface extrude, which you can see there, so that this is reference geometry so that we can attach a surface to an actual piece of 3D geometry. We also set up a 3D curve here, which you can see kind of highlighted in blue or orange, and then a number of guide curves. And then we tested the difference between boundary surface and filled surface to see which one would perform better on a surface like this. And we found that filled surface was the correct decision because we have this down here, which is called a degenerate point. We found out that boundary surface was kind of stuffing the surface into this edge and creating some nasty geometry here. But filled surface kind of lays a blanket surface over the entire scenario you've built and then trims it back and alleviates some of the issues associated with the degenerate point. Okay, there's one at both ends. Okay, so in this tutorial what we're going to do is we're going to be connecting these two surfaces together with another boundary surface. And so in order to do that, we need to first build curvature that goes from one surface to the other. Okay, and so let's just zoom in and start that. Okay, I'm going to go to my right plane. And I'll start up a sketch on my right plane, and I'm going to lay down a curve. It doesn't touch the model, but will soon. And as I mentioned before, both of these surfaces, the filled surface on top and the boundary surface on bottom, are both built using 3D curves. You can kind of see the 3D curve right here. It's blue, and it worries me that it's visible right now because the last thing that I want to do is attach this curve to the 3D curve instead of the surface. I always want to attach my curves to the surfaces as much as possible. And so I have to hide my 3D curves. I don't want to hide them individually. I want to hide all of my 3D curves at one time. And so up here, in this area here, there's hide and show items. If I open that up and I go down to this, go down to this button here, view curves. This is the toggle button to view and hide curves, 3D curves. So I'll click that button and you can see that the 3D curves kind of disappear. It's subtle and it's a small detail, and on the super high resolution max that you'll be using in class, it's going to be even more difficult to see. So just remember where this tool is and remember this button, which will hide and show your 3D curves. The other reason to remember where this button is because later in life, later in this model, what's the difference? You're going to forget that you've clicked this button and you're going to think, where's my 3D curves? And you're going to freak out. And it's just as simple as hitting this button to turn them back on. Okay? So I'll turn them off for now, and then I'll prepare to attach this to the edge of that surface and then the edge of this surface. And then I'm going to set curvature to this surface down here. And look what happens to my curve right away. It kind of, I want to say it like S's out. So we have to kind of help this along. So we'll click on the sketch and we'll kind of adjust it and get it into shape. Think about like that, looks good. And then we'll try to set curvature to this curve and then this surface. And it's going to fail. It's going to say there's no good intersection between the selected model geometry and the sketch. Okay. So this is the degenerate point kind of rearing its ugly head again. Although we used a filled surface to patch this degenerate point, still the geometry here is nasty enough that it's unable to feed this curve with the proper information that the curve needs. So a solution here would be to, instead of setting the curvature to the 3D surface, let's just go and set the curvature to the edge of the surface, which is a 2D entity. And it's able to do that because there's less geometry involved in a 2D edge than there is in a 3D surface. Okay? So kind of adjust that back into shape, and we'll go from there. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do an extruded surface off that. Same as I've done in the other tutorials. As usual, extrude goes in the wrong way. So we'll flip the direction right here using reverse direction, and we'll hit enter to approve. The surface absorbs the sketch, and we now have a piece of 3D geometry to represent one of the 4 edges that we're trying to build to patch this hole. 2 edges. So I'll go to right plane, sketch, open my spline, and again I'm going to loosely lay down a 2-point spline. I am going to pierce it to the bottom surface, because remember, this bottom surface, this is a 4-sided boundary surface patch. So there's a much friendlier situation happening down here than there is up here with the degenerate point in the filled surface. So that's why we're able to set curvature to this surface, is because it's just a much different piece of geometry down in the bottom. Again, this curve wants to act up, so we're going to wrangle it into shape like that, and I'll pierce it to this edge, and then I'll set curvature to the 2D edge over here also. Same way we did on the front. If it worked on the front, let's do it on the back too. Alright, and so we're good there, and we'll do an extruded surface. It's going to go the wrong way as usual. Flip it. Alright, and there you go. Okay, so I'm feeling good about that. Let's go ahead and just run the boundary surface and talk a little bit about what happens. So direction 1 will be from left to right. Direction 2 will be top to bottom. I'm going to go ahead and set curvature to this edge and curvature to this edge. I'm going to get a warning here that says the guide or profile curve's curvature at the end point does not match the curvature of the surface it touches. That's because we set curvature to the 2D curve. It's just reminding us of that, so just ignore that. And then I'll set curvature to this 3D surface here. We'll get the same warning. And then I'll set curvature here on this edge. Another warning. Ignore it. Okay, cool. So here we go. So we've created a boundary surface, but we've got a gang of problems, right? Look at the tail end of this thing is really lousy, right? We've got these weird ripples in our surface. If we look at the side view and we look at how the surface falls in the center of the model here, it's really ugly. There's going to need to be some sort of geometry to kind of help the surface go, because this wobble right here is not what we want, and it's also not what we see on the physical mouse itself. So, and it looks like we've got another wrinkle here. Let's try a few things. Let me just edit this feature, and instead of curvature to face, let's try tangency. Actually, that loosens it up quite a bit. Okay, tangency's okay. It's not as good as curvature, but in situations like this where you have a degenerate point and you're trying to match it to a 3- or 4-sided boundary surface, to situations like this where you just have really complicated surfacing going on, sometimes curvature to face is going to be too intense, and it certainly was in this scenario, and it warped our surface. So setting it to tangent is okay in this scenario. Let's do that to the other side and see if it fixes it on this side also. So we'll edit the feature. We'll set it to tangency to face. And you can see that little wrinkle just goes away instantly. All right, so that's pretty good for those edges. But we've still got this problem of whatever's going on in here. And what's happening here is just that the boundary surface is struggling to define what should happen in between the two edges of the model, and so it's trying its best to kind of fill in the blanks, but it's just the fact that we haven't told it what to do here. So we can do that with a couple of guide curves. Remember that when we did this boundary surface, we set this boundary surface on the bottom with 3 different guide curves in order to tell it to do what we want. So let's do the same thing with this boundary surface also. You know, also if we look at this filled surface, we see we've got 3 different guide curves running this filled surface on top. So why not do 3 guide curves on this surface as well? Okay, so it's a full delete for here. The good news is, because of the other guide curves we've built, we've got a bunch of different planes we can use to set it up. There's one in the center here, plane 4. We'll make a spline, and we'll attach it to both edges. Pierce, pierce, and curvature. And at this point I want to have a little bit of control over this curve, so I'm going to look at it and I'm going to adjust it, and then I'm going to set the curvature. And I don't see curvature, so that means I just did a misclick. I've got to get myself together here. There it is. Okay, so I'm kind of happy with that. I think that looks good. I'm going to approve that. There's one of 3 guide curves. Let's use some of the other planes we've made. Let's zoom out, just take a look at what we've got. There's that one again, plane 4. Plane 5 is out here in front. That's good. We'll need one there, so we'll just create a sketch there. Open up our spline tool, and same scenario as always. Pierce. Pierce. And we'll set curvature down here. And we'll look at this curve in 3D to help it along and get it into the position we want. Right? Yeah, that should work. There you go. All right, we'll approve that. And we'll go down here to the back end of the thing. We've got this plane that's hanging out. That's running the guide for this boundary surface down here, so we'll use that one. Pierce it. Pierce it. Dun, dun, dun. It's a long video, guys. I apologize for that, but this stuff takes a while. The good news is that it's kind of all the same procedure. Right? You're setting up guide curves, you're setting curvature. Okay, so there we go. All right, so let's run the boundary surface again. Sorry, I thought I saw something on this curve that was weird. Let's run it again and see what we get. Direction 1 is now going to include this edge, this guide curve, this guide curve. Oopsie, we got a flipped connector. Let's unflip it. All right, here we go. This guide curve, another flip, and this one. And then we'll go to direction 2 and we'll just enter in this edge and this edge. Okay? All right. Feeling good. So this flag corresponds to this edge, so we'll set that to, let's try curvature, see what happens. All right, because we have a guide curve here now, this guide curve may provide enough help to this surface that we can set curvature without getting that wrinkle. We've got this flag over here that corresponds to this edge. We'll set that to curvature. I keep getting these warnings that say it doesn't match. I'm just going to ignore that for now and try it anyway. I'm going to set this edge to curvature. And then I'll set this final edge to curvature, again making the assumption that this guide curve is going to provide enough mathematics so that curvature can be achieved without wrinkling our surface. Okay, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm going to approve it. Oh yeah, okay. It's looking good. I'm happy with this. Let's turn on some of our surface evaluation tools and just take a look at it. All right. So we've got a nice transition happening here with a nice gradation right across the seam. Same thing's happening up here. A little bit of drama happening there. We can always fix that later. Nice transition happening there. Right here we've got a nice sharp edge. That's okay because that's what we see in our model. You can see where the guide curve is right here. We've got a real smooth transition across this bottom seam. All right. This front edge looks pretty good as well. Looks like there's a little bit of a ripple right here. We could go ahead and add another guide curve in right there to kind of help that along. Since you know how to do that, I would recommend it, but I think for the purposes of this video, I think that we've kind of learned our lesson about how to pull this off. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn curvature analysis off and turn on zebra stripes and take a look at that. All right, and again, you can see right there where that zebra stripe kind of loops down. That's that ripple that we see. So I'd recommend throwing another guide curve in right there. Really what's going on with this model is that in this edge right here, this stretch that connects this top surface to the bottom surface and then around like that, this is a very complex piece of curvature right here. To get a surface to do that, it's extremely difficult. And so it might need a guide curve here and here to really tell it what to do. But this is a long video and I want to shut it down. And I think that you guys have enough to move forward. So I'm going to just hide these boundary surfaces or these extruded surfaces here. Okay. And I'm feeling really good about this model. In our next video, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to patch up the bottom here. And we'll do a mirror. And we'll take a look at this model for the first time with a mirror on. So we can see if all of our hard work of setting up this filled surface and this boundary surface and this boundary surface, setting all those up for success is going to work out or not. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.